call to order our regular meeting today on July 21st, 2025. Mr. Durer, roll call, please.
Mr. Bennington.
Here.
Mr. Anderson.
Here.
Ms. Minke. Ms. Larimer.
Here.
Ms. Roland Miller.
Here. If we could all rise to say the Pledge of Allegiance together.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I want to welcome everybody to the Commodore building this evening. It's always great to see all the seats filled for at least the beginning part of the meeting. We care about the safety of our students and staff and families and guests. Please note that there are exits on both the east and the west exits. In case of emergency, an AED is located right outside the cafeteria doors, and if for some reason emergency personnel is needed to be called, we are at 140 East Indiana Avenue. In front of us, we have our agenda for this evening. There is one amendment to the agenda. We have added 16.2, which is first reading of a policy update. We can either approve that for first reading or pull it from the consent agenda and refer it to policy committee. We can decide that later, but that is in at 16.2. So I would entertain a motion to approve the agenda as amended.
So moved.
Second.
Ms. Larimer, Mr. Bennington, Mr. Durer, roll call, please.
Ms. Larimer.
Yes.
Mr. Bennington.
Yes.
Mr. Anderson.
Yes.
Ms. Roland Miller.
Yes. We have an agenda. First thing on our agenda is to recognize the junior high track state qualifier, so I turn it over to Mr. Hostler.
Yes, thank you. It's certainly great to see everybody here, and it's good to get the students out of bed at this hour, so we appreciate parents working on that. So it's really a great Perrysburg kind of problem that we have when we have a month where we want to do recognitions of significant accomplishments like state qualifying. And we have so many that we need to get through that we have to break it up over two different meetings. So graciously working with athletic director at the junior high, Andrea Monheim, we were able to coordinate and have them come today. And I'll introduce Andrea, who will walk us through these great student athletes and their tremendous recognitions and accomplishments.
Alright, I'll just go ahead anyway. You all can hear me, right? Okay. Anyway, I am so happy to be here, so thank you. I know that they have wanted us to possibly come in September, and so Hannah and Rachel worked with us because Coach Murray and Coach Ferguson really wanted to have you guys in the summer because there's so many 8th graders, and he's like, well, they're technically only freshmen, so can you please sit on the summer? So here we are, and they're not here. So, but in their Coach Murray is up at the cross-country high school cross-country camp. So he is with actually a couple people that will be named that are not here because they're off from at the cross-country camp. And Coach Ferguson, to much of his dismay, was supposed to be here, but his plane is late. So it's not even coming in now until like 6:45. So I'm here. So there you go. So hopefully I get this all correct. But we are so excited and proud of our athletes. Because of Coach Murray and Coach Ferguson, I don't know if you know anything about our high school cross country and track, but they're outstanding, and it's all because it starts with their base. They're such fantastic coaches. We are so lucky to have them in our school district, and they've been here for so long. We just don't have that. Being an athletic director, I sit at those monthly meetings, hearing them over and over again complaining that another junior high track coach has quit. And I was just they're quiet because I'm like, yeah. And then they always say, well, how many of you have on your team? 220? How many do you have? Oh, 25. Oh, okay. Can you like just send us like your B and C team? We'd be happy. So we really are excited for that. So we'll start with the ladies first. So if you pause right for the sticky, come on and join me. So I'm not here by myself, and they'll know who you are. You come on up. Come on.
We'll do all of them together. Yep.
Slide down a little closer to the, all right, gentlemen, come on up here. Several of you here, I see you. Come on up. Embarrassing the young men here. All right, qualifying on the boys' side. We had Dakota Jackson in the 200-meter dash and the long jump. Dakota was third in the long jump with a jump of 20 feet, 8 3/4 inches. I don't know if you were here last year. I talked about how, he wasn't even here, I talked about we should have had this young man there last year, but now this year we did have him, so. And he also, that was a brand new school record, which happened to be his own school record, which he broke from his 7th grade. He also ran it at 20.95, and that placed him also on the podium 8. So he's 3rd and 8th, 2 times on the state podium. Congratulations. And that was also a school record, which he broke his own from 7th grade. So I'm just telling you right now, as you can tell as I continue, our high school coaches are drooling and cannot wait to get this class of 8th graders who are now freshmen coming in. So, moving on, we had our 4x18 that qualified for the state meet. That comprised of Nolan Shapila, Bryson Nichols, Hudson Bauman, and Bowen Willer. They were 20th in the state, and they had a season best time of 9:07. Congratulations, gentlemen. And then last but not least, Speedy Grayson Sedenko qualified in the 110-meter hurdles. He qualified for the state meet in his season best time as well, in a time of 16.27. I am done. So, can I say the girls also broke school records? Yes, actually, the 4x2, thank you, in the NLL, they broke it in 149.88, and Marissa Cope was actually also on that as well. So, thank you. Anything else that I missed? Like I said, I was pinch hitting here. Anything else? All right, thank you, Dan. Okay, awesome. All right, picture time. I know I love to smile, so just close over there. All your moms, your sisters, scrapbooks.
Who's taking pictures?
She's not here.
Oh, I guess it's Tom.
We'll have those that are taller kind of get in the back row behind this. You guys need to slide down. You guys step forward. The gentleman, slide back up against the. Keep going, guys. Get a little closer. Keep going. Keep going.
Birding cats.
Here, get in a little closer. All right. That's good.
Yeah.
Nobody knows who the one is.
Did you do track in school?
I was on the track team.
I
Great support here today by the parents and filling in great information. Thank you to all the parents for all your support to make this success possible. And I've seen the cross-country, I think, primarily, but I know probably some of the runners here and some of the runners missing today that are out running every morning at the fort. So I know that the work continues year-round. So thank you to all. Thanks for coming tonight that we could recognize you. Appreciate it.
We do have a certificate for everybody that was here, so if you could catch Mrs. Monheim before she leaves, we'll make sure everybody gets theirs during the break.
Okay, we have a 5-minute break, so it is 5:57. We will be back at it at Let me do the math, 602. Is the opportunity for the public to have input into the decisions that we'll be making later in the meeting. We have one person signed up, so I would invite Nikki Clark forward, same as before, name, address, and then we'll have 3 minutes for comments.
Hi, so I'm Nikki Clark. I live at 24930 Saddlehorn. I wanted to discuss item 13.1. It includes a resignation from the high school counseling office, which is the third member of a student services team to step away in recent months. While staff transitions are a normal part of any school year, this level of turnover in such a short frame, especially in student support roles, warrants some deeper reflection. We've seen a number of resignations across the district this year, counselors, teachers, building principals, and others. And these are professionals who have made significant impacts. And as a community, we have to ask, are we doing everything we can to ensure that our staff feel supported, valued, and heard? More importantly, is the board looking at these resignations for patterns? Are they concentrated in one building, one department, one demographic group? If we're seeing resignations disproportionately from a specific gender, location, or role, we have to ask why. Because what we permit, we promote, and failing to acknowledge patterns could reinforce the very dynamics we should be working to correct. The counselor that's resigning tonight is someone whose contributions speak for themselves. She launched the district's facility dog program, securing $85,000 in donations to place a dog in every building. She led the district-wide SCUTA implementation and training to strengthen data-informed student support. As the swim head coach, brought in 2 Big Ten coaches to work with our students and raised funds to bring in 2 high-quality video analysis systems. She was also in 22 honored as an emerging leader by the Ohio School Counselor Association, and that's only given to 5 individuals. We published that in 22. So when someone with this level of dedication and innovation chooses to leave, that's a moment we have to ask, what can we learn? And whether we're creating the kind of environment that retains exceptional staff. It is also worth noting that the high staff turnover doesn't just impact morale. It carries a significant financial cost. Recruiting, hiring, onboarding, that all takes time and money. Is our board committed to analyzing those resignation trends so that we can help protect both our people and our resources? Finally, the appointment of our new high school principal with no outside posting or interviews does raise serious questions. We cited a staff survey, yet many of the concerns in that survey appear to have gone unaddressed. Has the board reviewed those survey results in full? Have the staff's concerns been heard? Many high school staff members are choosing to move from the high school to other buildings in the district following this decision. Is that a coincidence, or is it a sign that something needs examined? Has this board done some history, some looking to figure that out? Again, what we permit, we promote. I respectfully ask, how are we ensuring that staff voices are being meaningfully heard and that resignations are not signaling preventable issues within our system? Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Clark. All right. This time, I'd like to move to Agenda 6. Mr. Hostler, we start with the annual capital project update.
All right, thank you very much. So James Mapus is our Executive Director of Operations, and this is the time of year where we begin to talk through just giving a quick kind of overview of all the different projects and things that are planned and are hopefully underway and completed.
Yeah.
So.
A lot of these are last year's projects, so this year they're kind of different. But I just want to start off, first off, by thanking the community for passing our PI. As you'll see, we really try to do a lot of great things for students, and the money goes to roofing and things like that, which are high dollar amounts, so we thank you for that. And also to my staff, administrators, our custodians, and everyone, I have to say, whenever they need a part or they look for anything, they will come to me with 3 quotes and have to justify why one is 20 cents more and that's the one they want over something else, but they still have all the different quotes. And so it's definitely a team effort, so I don't want to stand up here tonight to just represent just me, but our whole group, because everyone in operations really does a great job with that. So this year, because of some grant funding that we got, we were able to purchase.
James, can you just clarify really fast? When you
Yes.
say this year, you mean
This last
school calendar year?
School calendar year,
Thank
yes,
you.
yes.
Okay.
And that's actually a good question because PI money actually runs through the year. But yes, school calendar year. So we were able to purchase 16 new propane buses. Originally, when we looked to buy new buses, and I said to the group, hey, I found some way to get some new buses because some of our buses were 26 years old. And they're like, oh my God, that's great. And then I'm like, yeah, they're propane. They were like, I don't know. But they've embraced them. We now own 36 of them. The cost of ownership is a lot lower than a diesel. Everyone's embraced them. So with those 16 new buses coming in and that $400,000 in grant money, we did have a cost in our GPS systems, which is the mapping and routing software that goes live in the buses that the parents can see where their buses are, and all that push notification as well. So that was $4,093.40 for those GPS units. One of the things that, again, we were talking about were roof repairs. This year we had an incident at Fort Meigs where we had to change some of the roof around the cupolas. They just weren't correct, so $6,932.20 to change those. And then we had an unexpected thing happen at the junior high. We had our elevator go out, and the insurance paid to have our elevator fixed. We were then having an all-star football game and lost power yet again. And we couldn't figure it out, so we had a company come out, and the main line, just from being years old, was bad. And so we replaced that. So that was $26,727. One of the other expenses we had were with the fuel tank. So obviously we already owned one fuel tank like this for our propane buses, but with the additional 16 buses, we wanted to bring another fuel tank on just to help fuel. Typically all the buses are in there within 15 to 20 minutes of each other, so it just helps the process. So they're spread out 2 bus lengths apart, so that way we're able to fuel 2 buses, and you can see that was $8,600. So, yes?
On the cost of the propane tank, what was our portion of it?
So we actually pay only for the actual inspection, the permits, the hookup, and that's it. Everything else is through AmeriGas. So we have no other costs other than just like the pipe bollards, anything that's structural to the property, electric lines, things like that, that's it. We work out a really good deal with AmeriGas. They're really good to us. If we have a bus that travels really far away, if they have to, they'll wet hose us and send a bus over to us. And the drivers are really good about letting us know, like, hey, I think I'm gonna go further than where I need gas, and we arrange it. AmeriGas helps us out, so we're thankful for that partnership.
Thanks. Sorry to.
No, you're good. Good catch. So music equipment, we had $70,000. That goes towards fixing instruments, buying new instruments. Mick and his crew and Scott always do a great job of letting us know what needs to be fixed. And if it can't be repaired, they are very good about saying like, hey, we tried, we just don't think it's worth putting the money in, so we will replace some of those instruments. So there was $70,000 that went to that. Classroom furniture, we had $50,000 that went into that this year. With the growing needs, we just keep adding furniture. So this is actually in the 4 years that I've been doing this, I think the least amount that we've spent. So this winter, we had that catch basin you see right there fall in on itself with really no explanation as to why. So we had to get that fixed. And so as we were getting that fixed, I struck up a deal with them to say like, hey, if you fix that now, will you come back and seal coat later for a different price? And he was like, yeah, I can do that for you. So they're really good working with us. So they fixed that catch basin and then came back and sealed that parking lot. It looks really great. So new roof, last year final cost was $500,000 exactly, which the guy's like, you should go play the lottery. That's never happened to me in my years, but so we were able to get that fixed. Every year we do another section of the roof. The problem with roofing is cost of it. It's usually half of our budget that goes into roofing projects. So we're thankful to be able to get that done at the junior high this year. So one of the things that you'll see here is HVAC parts and repairs. And this is a little different from years past. So our staff members, I believe it's in our teacher contract and our OPSI contract, where if they go back for any kind of education, we pay up to a certain amount. And so a lot of school districts, this last year at Capitol Conference, a lot of school districts were saying they're bringing on electricians, they're bringing on different people in-house to do their work. And so one of our things that we got rid of was our $120,000 contract with our HVAC company. And so we approached Steve Ashenfeller, who's been with the district for a long time, and said, hey, what do you think about taking this class at Penta? By you taking this class, there's perks to us being able to purchase things direct without having to go through a third party. We can buy direct, get it wholesale. It's just smart for us, and it would work better for you. And he's like, absolutely. He's knowledgeable. He knows our system. So it was really no challenge for him. So he was able to go out and get all that software. We've actually saved so far this year over $120,000 by buying different JACEs and different things that we need to replace, where before we would have to actually go out and have another company buy it for us, and then they would upcharge it and then sell it back to us. So now we can buy direct, but there were some costs just because we didn't have the software and some things like that, some tools to do diagnostics. So that was $45,420. So actual repairs and parts that we've had to purchase were the 25,858, which would have been significantly more if it would not have been for that cost. So one of the things we also had to do is upgrade some of our camera systems. So we did the initial 16 new buses, and then some of our older buses had cameras from the 90s that just were outdated and not working, so we updated some of those. So 47,273, and the great thing about these cameras is they're wide angle, so you don't have to have as many, and we see literally everything, even things we don't want to see. So it's been great. A new aerial lift. So the lift cost us around $130,000 total, and then there was a grant that paid part of that. The portion that we had to pay was the $43,389, and it replaced a lift that we've had in the district for over 20 years. So this was not a fun, and it was unexpected. Our fire pump went out at the high school, and we had to do a fire watch. We had people in the building that would constantly had to walk calls. There was a whole chart we had to keep. You can see the clipboard still actually sitting up there. So we had to replace that fire pump. It's crucial to the district. It's crucial to the high school to be able to get water out if there were to be an emergency. So again, it's something we had to do, but wasn't budgeted, but that was $55,419.06. And that's it.
I've been doing a running total, and it's $1,380,179.
Yeah, and some people are going to say, well, you got more than that, so why? So I will justify why we have some money. So I knew if the levy didn't pass, I needed to make sure that I had enough to cover our next bus payments. And so that was built into that, knowing that we would pull that money back to be able to pay off those bus purchases.
To hit you with this cold, I like to do this every year, but so of those projects, which ones would you consider like unexpected? The fire pump was one.
Like the fire pump was one of them, the Fort Meigs, the roof one, yeah. And the insurance did help us out with some of that Fort Meigs one as well, yeah.
I was trying to get a gauge of the cost, how much.
Yeah.
The over under and how much is kind of unexpected year to year, oh my gosh, can we cover this type of.
Well, and you had that electrical line thing too.
Yeah,
when-
the electrical line was
it's
definitely
like
one of them.
The hits just kept coming.
Yeah,
Well, the catch basin, if that suddenly.
Oh, yeah, that's.
All right, so
yeah.
ahead of us swivel this summer.
Yeah, it's not fun when one of your bus drivers comes in and says, my wheel is stuck in the parking lot. And we're like, stuck in the parking lot? What do you mean by that? But,
Expand.
wasn't a big deal. She was able to back out of it, and we were okay. And, we really try hard to get grants. One of the things this year that we did, and I am known as sometimes being cheap. I would correct them and say frugal. But we didn't know if we were going to get a grant through workers' comp to be able to buy some floor machines that were automated, and you can either push them or automatically they will go on their own. And so the custodians were really excited about this, and I told Jason, I'm like, let's go ahead and just purchase them. I think we're going to get the grant money. I feel comfortable with it. But either way, like, it's time we treat ourselves. Like, everyone works really hard. We save money. Turns out we didn't treat ourselves because the workers' comp ended up paying for them, which was really nice that they paid for them. But we were able to introduce 3 new floor machines into our buildings. And for a group of people who have not complained at all, and some of them are cleaning 6 more classrooms a night, it definitely is a great need for those custodians, and we're grateful for that as well. So that's it.
You guys hit the nail on the head. I mean, there is a balance. James has his PI budget. That's what all this is, but there's other expenses that come out of general fund. But James manages the PI, and we have a conversation back and forth where the spending is going to come out of. In general, if it's PI, we try to take it out of PI first.
Yeah.
Now, one of the changes for this coming fiscal year is we still have a new bus lease, but it's not coming out of PI, it's coming out of general fund. So, kind of shifting, that's a predictable amount, and it's easier to put that out of general fund and let the PI money do what it's been doing.
And our custodians work really hard. One of the things I did this year, I think most of them hate me for it. They'll never say that probably to my face, but we used to do FRQ for all of our products all at once to go out for toilet paper, cleaning supplies. And so this year, last year, I should say, when the results came in, I was like, well, wait a minute, this toilet paper is cheaper, this soap's cheaper. So this year we bid it out all separate, and everyone was like, that's crazy, why would you do that? And so when all of the quotes came in, I'm like, we saved like $300 in toilet paper, and everyone was like, oh. But when you add it all up, I mean, it's significant. So they worked with me on it. I know that they were aggravated probably with me when I'm like, we're bidding everything out separate, but they spent the time on it, they work hard for it, and when I share with them like, hey, we saved a lot of money, you know, when you're buying 900 cases of that kind of soap, here's the results, and then they're like, okay, well, I'm glad we did it then. But yeah, so definitely our staff is great, so you know, kudos to them as well.
Year after year, hearing this presentation, I've always appreciated how you stretch that dollar as far as you can, how your team works diligently keeping the buses on the road until they just can't anymore.
Yeah.
I mean, you really add value, you and your team really add value to this district. It's always appreciated.
Thank you. Thanks.
Is the bus you referenced, Mr. Drewer, the bus that we're approving in 16-4? Is that, no?
No, the 16 buses we purchased,
Okay.
we had a $400,000 in EPA clean air grant. The lease purchase is out of general fund. The last lease purchase we did was out of PI.
And
Now,
the,
obviously,
okay, the
any
bus
point-
we're approving tonight is from PI2.
and that's a it's a cash deal.
Yeah. So what happened is we've seen an influx in special needs students where they need to be in wheelchairs. And so logistical, it's getting really hard to maneuver around. And so we just need to bring another bus on. And so that will help alleviate some of that. So typically you see a bus around 120,000. The reason it's 151 is because it is a wheelchair bus that has a lot of extra safety devices, the wheelchair lift itself and things like that. So there is an extra cost, but I'm sure we'll have it for 20, 25 years. So.
Other questions? Well, thank you very much.
All right,
As
thank you.
always, thank you for all
Yeah.
your work and for your team.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, thanks.
Yeah, with buses that are 25 years old, they're eligible for historical plates. And then on Friday nights, after we drop the kids off, we pull up on the lawn with the other classic cars.
Are those for sale?
Ah, there you go.
As long as they don't get
So it's-
stuck.
Actually, those 16 buses that came out of service, because we had a clean air grant, essentially they had to go back and they essentially spiked the engine so they're not operable. The whole idea of the clean air grant is to make sure you don't put those polluting monstrosities back on the road.
Yep. So just the July report, Autumn just graduated from Perrysburg High School. She was a member of the Penn Career Center's teaching professions. She finished second nationally in teacher-created materials. And I believe Mr. Christie is tracking her right now as we speak as she gets ready to head off to college. So the Penn Careers program, you might recall, the program with teaching professions was housed at Perrysburg High School, and they recently moved to Bowling Green State University. So it's great to see our students continuing to pursue education as a career option, and we're certainly encouraged and proud of Autumn and all that she did. So this past summer, we had 5 students to the National Speech and Debate Nationals. You saw them at the state. They were one of the groups that we recognized recently, so they did go on, and they ended up representing the district very, very well. So we're proud of our students, and at the national level. Also, we had Megan Coons, who's a HPI teacher. You might remember Megan was also on the governor's panel for social studies this past year. Anyway, she was part of a exchange program for the National Consortium of Teachers about Asia, the Freedom Foundation and the Center for East Asian Studies at The Ohio State University, and they were immersed in some of those topics where they visited. So we're very grateful for what she does and this opportunity, and being able to bring this back to the classroom. Megan does an outstanding job. One of the reasons why she was selected to be part of the governor's review of social studies in the state of Ohio, and it's because of this dedication that certainly sets her apart from many other teachers across the state and country for that matter. Speaking of teachers that really separate themselves by going and doing so much outside the classroom, Megan Hellman joined a Holocaust education seminar in Poland. So certainly an important conversation to continue. And with the junior high and the Holocaust speakers that they have brought each year, this is certainly very timely, as that generation of survivors are disappearing because of their ages. So keeping this conversation alive and bringing those kind of resources back to Perrysburg is certainly significant. Flipping back to HPI, the Green Flag Award, so National Wildlife Federation's Eco School program. So going out and doing what they can to recycle and raise awareness is something that is very exciting. The Jacket Moments That Matter, congratulations, Debbie Teston, 20 years of Morning Smiles, greeting students, protecting students, welcoming students. Those are one of those positions where, the car line volunteer is someone that really sets the tone and is able to start the day off in a great way. So her dedication, warm presence have really been a cherished part of that community and our community. So we love it. School is out, but learning continues. And this is some of the activities that families are going out and taking their children to different locations and experiencing that that history isn't something that just is in a book. It is something that is out there that they can see and put their hands on and experience and walk in those steps. Also, the 9/11 Memorial Museum, Statue of Liberty, another family that learning continues, the DeMars family. And of course, learning comes in all shapes and sizes. So we have a couple of examples here of students that are, getting ready for second grade and taking moments to spread their blanket out on the grass and lawn and do all different kinds of activities. And one of my favorite things is the Friday, September 25th, is the Perrysburg High School Band alumni are invited back to participate. To put it in perspective, we have more alumni show up for this event to participate than most of the schools that we compete against on Friday night have in their band. So it is incredible. And it's nice to hear the banter among the folks who point at each other and say, you're really not playing and you're just faking it, and others work on the music, and so there's a lot of camaraderie there. So something to let our alumni know that there's a sign up, and we always look forward to September 5th, we look forward to September 5th and getting our alumni back out there, so.
August 29th.
Oh, yeah, August, please register before
Okay.
August 29th for the Friday, September, yes.
Oh, I'm
yep,
sorry.
September 5th.
I was going to
yep.
tell my son the wrong day.
Yeah,
Thank you for the correction.
hopefully he'll come prepared to perform, so.
Or he'll double check
work
his
on that
mother,
lip.
which is smarter.
So that's it for July superintendent's report, so.
Okay. We move on to the calendar.
So we have a hearing that we have to hold to adopt the school calendar. So this school calendar is for the 26-27 school year. So we did have a process where we involved teachers and other staff members, administrators, who came together to review the calendar and did come up with a recommendation that is attached. And it follows very closely to next year and this year's. It's always interesting when you have somebody new join the committee, because they have all different ideas as to how they would like to change and the schedule, and it's really a very intricate process. And when you begin to lay some foundations and base some decisions about our schedule around ending the semester, for example, at the break, instead of having students in high school come back for 2 weeks and taking exams. So when you make that commitment, which we have, then that backs you up approximately 90 days from that start time, and that puts you in August and not Labor Day. And then when you look at state testing and when that occurs, having a floating spring break creates problems because we have a limited window for testing. And so we have a fixed spring break that typically falls where it's outlined here. So this is a pretty standard. We did plug in some events here, but when the board does approve the calendar, it is the major date, so that if we have to change the high school open house, for example, for whatever reason, we can do that without having to get the board approval. So this is something that you know, wanted to give you a peek at the whole school year, and then when we publish it and when the board votes, it'll be the, you know, the basic blocks that we have, because sometimes for different reasons we have to shift, you know, open houses and things of that nature. But at any rate, this gives you an idea of the orientations beginning, the in-service days, which is something that's there, the jacket jump starts for elementary students, and then where we end up with Friday, May 21st. So we were out a week before, and the calendar will flip depending on when that, you know, as the calendar moves from year to year, the starting date will rotate, you know, we'll slowly move with it. So right now we're on that short kind of August early date, but in another, you know, 3 years, 4 years, it'll start to move back up to where it begins. In the past, we've not included June and July on the calendar, but we did include that to reflect the holidays over the summer, so that individuals can see where those occur. We did normally, you know, like I said, we did have sometimes June would appear because we would have staff there and people would see the Juneteenth calendar and say, well, why aren't you recognizing the 4th of July? Well, we don't have any school activities in July, but we have reflected those holidays so people can see that. So we're not just reflecting one or the other kind of a thing. So
I think the other thing to highlight is that this will be the first calendar that incorporates in the trimesters for the elementary versus the quarter system for 5th and up. So that was to align with some reporting that the elementary school requested.
Yep, and you'll see those trimester dates, pre-K 4, November 6th, and when the teachers talked about it takes them some time to get to know their students, to be able to capture that information, to have those meaningful conversations with families, and some of those conferences were popping up pretty early as they're collecting that data. So this, they felt, was really important to be able to provide a better snapshot of where those students were and relay that to their families. So.
Yeah, you're right, there are a lot of parameters that you have to work within to put this together, but I know that team you referred to, that doesn't diminish the amount of thoughtfulness they put into doing this calendar. And I was talking to a parent just today, you know, what's on the agenda, and I said 27 calendar, and he was appreciative. You know, that people are planning time away that far out, so they find that helpful to do that far out. The comment here is, it's hard to believe looking at this and knowing that it aligns with the 25-26 calendar, August 4th, right around the corner. So, you know, here we go again for another school year is right around the corner. So.
I had a conversation with one of the families that was just here being recognized, and they're saying, you know, next week summer's over. Because when you're in the junior high and high school, those activities begin in August, and you already start getting back into the school mode. And elementaries have a little more breathing room, but for all extensive purposes, things start happening here very soon, Eric, yes.
That's what we're here for, I suppose.
All right. Any other comments or questions about the calendar? We'll move on to 6.4.
Oh, sorry, there's an approval
Oh,
later
do
on
we
in the
need-
agenda. Oh, I just forgot.
Is there an
It's a
approval?
hearing.
It's
It's
a
a
hearing.
hearing. So anyone who has concerns, we would note those and make adjustments, and then we will bring it back the next meeting, and hopefully the board will approve it. So if there's feedback that you receive, feel free to share. And certainly anybody who's watching this would like to make any suggestions.
I have some
we hear
parents
things
that
like,
might want like year-round school, but yeah.
we don't hear that so much from families, but we can't help that the lake water is warmer in August than it is in June. So those kinds of suggestions and feedback certainly are welcome, but that doesn't drive our calendar process, so.
Water, July's pretty warm this year, so.
Yeah. So next on the agenda is this operational planning process launch. So I wanted to talk through this a little bit. So why this process matters. In the event that on November 4th, the levy is rejected, we will need to begin to work on coming up with a plan to address the loss of revenue for that entire next school year and calendar year. So again, if the levy is rejected in November, we lose an entire calendar year's worth of the ability to collect funds. And so without those funds coming into the district and the rejection that we currently are working through, there needs to be a plan to address that revenue shortfall. And so we wanted to begin that conversation now in anticipation of the board's decision about a levy. This is not something that is a threat, like, oh no, here they go, they're putting a levy on and they're threatening what goes away. But we lost $13.5 million last year. The board is looking at a solution to reclaim a portion of that. And if we're not successful with that and the community rejects that, then we need to keep our doors open and we need to continue to operate, and there will be further reductions, and that's just what has to happen. So one of the things that we hear is, how do we arrive at these reductions? We always share these with the community, usually late September, early October, and say, this is what happens if. And we inevitably have people that say, you know, well, how did you arrive at this? And we have an internal staff and external residents say, these are things and questions about the process. So we wanted to, first of all, engage the board in a way that maybe publicly hasn't been done before. And that is, as we begin to look at these reductions and the work that has to go into those, asking the Board of Education to identify their values and the things that, you know, they prioritize as we look at having to make reductions. And so this will give our administration and the folks that we work with the ability to use that lens when beginning to look at having to make reductions. So we're going to do an exercise tonight. We've never done this before, so we'll see how it goes. But I think it's very important that the community hears and sees the values that you're laying out that are important to you, that we want to use to begin to help shape those reductions. You've heard me say over and over again that we really look at the bullseye, you know, as the classroom, the student. And then we look at those things that are outside that bullseye, and that's where we begin to make those reductions. And so today we will begin to identify what those rings are, what is inside that bullseye from the board's perspective. We understand this is the first conversation. There might be further, you know, considering we can't say, well, the last time we did this, this is the process we used. So this time, I think, you know, there may be some follow-up that the board wants. The other piece of this is I'll go through bringing in a group of folks, a few parents, teachers, and support staff. They are not in a position where, if you're in a union, for example, you can't help make recommendations to cut another union position. And so that's not what this group is going to do. However, we want other people in the room looking at the development of our plan to provide feedback, to ask questions as we are shaping it. And I think that will go a long way to help us make sure that we're dialing it in correctly and we're thinking of all the different things that administrators sometimes overlook. And so this is one of the things that we're proposing to do with this process in addition to the board's role with this. And then finally, we want people to understand that there isn't a dartboard in someone's office and that's how we generate these recommendations. It is something that each building is charged, each department is charged, whoever has a budget is charged to identify cost savings and reductions and make sure that they're hitting the targets that we've established. And so you don't want Randy and I sitting down and saying, these are the things that should be reduced in preschool, for example. You want the people that are there who understand what is it that we can, offer up. Certainly is going to have an impact, but they're measuring that through their expertise, and that's where we want these decisions made ultimately. But the board providing that lens that those administrators and department heads will use when they're looking at the things available, I think will be helpful in that process. So again, this is about preparation. It's not about fear. It's not about threatening, but it is about being real. It is about having to look at how do we operate in a way without those dollars being available. So as we get started, the board will establish value statements and a planning framework. The decisions that we're looking to make will be based in part on some of these thoughts and the framework that the board is looking to work through in this conversation. It assures alignment with our mission, our vision, our core values, and again, getting down to that bullseye, which is the classroom, and trying to protect that to the best that we can. And again, this last round of reductions, when you think back to 2010 when we had to make reductions, we had $3.5 million we reduced. We had approximately 53 employees then, and just over 20 teachers that were reduced in 2010. Now we were going through a process that saw 60 staff members and just under 30 staff members, teachers cut in this last round to get to $6 million. So we really did work on that when you compare to the last time that we reduced and trying to spread those reductions out. So the overview of the planning process, we just talked a little bit about that. We want to provide some updates as we go through this process so people can see what that is. And again, the folks that are part of this group are not there to make recommendations, but they are to listen, to ask questions, to be part of that feedback loop to us as we gather things. We'll provide summaries after each session. So what goes on behind closed doors, we want to open those doors and say, this is what was discussed, this is the framework, this is what we're looking at. And we want to provide community updates as well. So some guiding principles for our discussion, it comes down to, with the loss of revenue, and this is hard to balance, but with the loss of revenue, what outcomes or student experiences must be protected? And what values should shape these difficult decisions? So I think that kind of sets the table for the board to begin to capture this. So the prompt, what cannot be compromised unless legally mandated? So there are things that we can't cut. Even if the board said we want to eliminate all of transportation, for example. Legally, the board can't eliminate transportation for grades K through 8. But transportation for grades 9 through 12 is not required. IEPs, health and safety mandates, and then board identified protected service or roles. So that's how we go through the list of all the things that we have to do, that we don't have a choice, the mandates. We can't cut those. And then we begin to look at what are those things that the board says, these are what we feel, not individual items, that's not the board's role, but it is, these are the things that we want you to consider when you're making this plan. And that's what we're looking for the board tonight. And then the board will see the individual items and then vote on those items. So that's kind of the process that we have. And so we have lists of those kinds of things. What does clear and timely communication look like? How do we ensure the public sees what we are planning responsibly and not threatening consequences? So we unveil the reduction list in October or late September and say, here it is. If the levy's rejected, this is what will happen. How do we begin to have a longer and more transparent dialogue about getting to that place together based on the criteria that the board has set out? So we want to draft the values and framework in the following discussion, and then we'll begin to work for the launch in early August, provide those public updates, and again, this process, what we're talking about today, is not identifying specific areas of reductions, but it is laying out those guardrails that will be trying to keep the car on the road as we head down this path. And hopefully all of this work and all the things that we're talking about will be for naught. And that's ultimately our goal. That this exercise is leading us to something that will never have to be touched. And but we also live in a time where we know that that's not always the case. So we have to be prepared. So with that, I'll turn it back over to
Mr. Hausler, before you do that, do you want to comment on the other information you had pulled together?
We had some thoughtful conversations with board members, so I always appreciate board members' feedback. And one of the things that was discussed was identifying key metrics for operational planning. So we talk a great deal, and we'll talk about it a little later in this board meeting, True Days cash. So as a board, you've said we need to have 2 months of operating cash in the bank. And that is a priority of the board. So the feedback from a board member looking at this saying, boy, it would be nice to have a similar kind of thing for some of the other operational components. And that's pretty challenging. And the example used was if class sizes for elementary students increase to 30, this is an example, is there anything that shows a decrease in student achievement? There's a lot of research out there about class sizes, and there are a lot of different conclusions about class sizes depending on the age, the subject area. And so what we've done here is we've tried to anticipate some questions the board may have. So the first document here that I shared in preparation for this is the K-4 student-teacher ratio. For example, right now, it's not a hard average, but if the average is about 21 to 23 students in those grade levels, if we go above that, what impact would that have on the learning environment? So we've made it a priority to keep class sizes lower in Perrysburg in those elementary grades to the best of our ability. And the reason we do is because it reduces individual attention, which is essential in those early grades. We also understand that early literacy and math impact, you get one chance at introducing some of these things. So we have always, when we've looked at reductions, we've tried to maintain those low class sizes, especially there in those primary grades. As you get out to the upper grade levels, the research doesn't hold up as well in terms of making a difference. And so you will see those class sizes, be anywhere from 25 to 30. We've worked really hard to keep those down. However, given the fact that we're, losing funding, lost funding, we've had to make some adjustments. So we focused here on saying, okay, core class, math, reading, math, science, social studies, those core courses, let's work on keeping those class sizes. Electives, maybe allow for a little bit of a float there. Specialized programming, AP, one College Credit Plus. Gifted, that's a program that is gone. So that's why it's a specialized area, but we understand that those specialized areas are not required to provide those services. There isn't a requirement for AP courses, but we understand that should be a priority for people's consideration. Class sizes, the next conversation begins with school counselors and what the ratios are there. And there's an ability to increase those if that becomes something, so transportation, right now 30 minutes, 20 minutes. But if we look at, we could go 60 minutes, we could go without high school busing. But again, there are impacts to all those things. So this was just an exercise to give you some ideas to think through when it comes to staking out your priorities and allowing us to capture those. The second sheet, the Fair School Funding Model, this is how the state calculates the base cost. So as the co-chair of this committee, and the years that we worked on this, we were asking, what is it that every typical child should have in their school experience? And then we had to then cost out on average across the state of Ohio, what is the cost of that? And that becomes the state's share, those averages, So here, kindergarten, we recommended we should fund teachers at 20-to-1 ratio. And then at the other elementaries, you'll see it's at 23, and then it kind of creeps up with 4th and 5th grade, and then the height. So you see that there is already a roadmap to those ideals. It doesn't mean school districts have to do this, it's just how the state chooses to fund them. And then the funding is then so this is an example from an actual school district that I pulled, but in kindergarten, for example, the state funds them at 20 for every teacher. There was 57 students, so the number of teachers the state funded was 2.9 teachers. And they used the most current average across the state. So when we talk about the state is not updating their inputs, the 2.9 funded teachers is based on several years old data. So that's the impact of how that actually works in the funding model. I know we're not here for that. That's not this portion, but you're funding 2.9 teachers, and you're using data that's 4 years old now. So, whereas our data locally is updated every year. So I digress, but we understand that direct teaching instruction, that's important. Specials teachers, we understood those were important. One specials teacher for every 150 students. Professional development, we need to fund that because that's essential. And then you look at co-curriculars, guidance support, safety, security, non-personnel. You can look at all those other things that go into what is needed to fund a building. So that could be another tool for the board to look at to say, social emotional security, life support, that is something that is important. And what does that look like? That's SRO in one district. That could be additional psychologists in another district. But an element of that is something that should be remaining. So these are some things the state says, we're funding you. You don't have to use them this way. But these are things that we feel that every school, every student should have. So that's, that's what these documents are. And I will get these uploaded to board docs because we just created them here late this afternoon.
Helpful. If we could go, Mr. Hustler, back to the slide 6 or 7. There we go. Yep. Let's go back to 6. In terms of our discussion, hopefully folks have had some chance to think about this a little bit, but I want to open it up for discussion as we talk about some of these guardrails, as we look at hopefully reductions we never have to do.
So we're basically defining the bullet in the center.
Mm-hmm.
Well, when you come to complex problems like this, I fully believe in the KISS method. So what outcomes or student experiences must be protected? It's all about the students. Any cut that we have to consider should always be looked through that lens. How will this impact a student? How will it harm or benefit a student by this being kept or taken away? That's got to be the first filter. And of course, that's why I really struggled with the gifted one, because that was directly related to a student. I mean, you're certainly going to balance the things, and it goes back to the legal part. We weren't required to do the gifted students. It's not a state law. Why? that's as Tom just said, I digress. But that's got to be the original filter. And then from there, you've got to look at, are we legally required to do it? Do we have the staff support to do it? And I think this is a really challenging thing to do, because if there's one thing I've learned with all of my ideas that I've thrown out over the 12 years, is that there is not a single domino, I don't think, involved in a school district, regardless of size, that doesn't have other dominoes around it that will be affected if you take it away. And because I thought I had some really good ideas a lot of times, only to be told, yeah, but you see, this affects this, which affects this, and which affects that. This is why this is such an incredibly challenging task to do, and why really I rely on Tom and Don and Brooke and Randy and all of our people in our administration that know their fields, because even though we've been on the board, we're not the micromanagers to understand all those infinitesimal dominoes that you say, oh, well, let's take this, and then there's a whole bunch of dominoes that can't participate. I mean, it's crazy. It's crazy how it's all involved. So to see what Mr. Christie has gone through in dealing with personnel and the bumping, the shifting, the dancing that he's had to do, this is challenging, which is why I said keep it simple. For our level, keep it simple. Anything that they bring to us, how is this going to affect a student? That's to me what's important. And then you add, how's it going to affect the staff? But if you affect the staff, you're also affecting the student. I don't know. That was all I could come up with, really. I don't think that was very helpful. It's like, yeah, you got a problem here if you have to cut any more. It's going to be excruciating. It's going to be nigh on impossible. But we might have to do it, so how do we do it? That's the sieve it's got to go through.
Okay, thank you. Anyone?
Yeah, I'm going to give it a try here. I think this information here is like really helpful. And Ms. Lerman, you said some things that kind of helped. As I was hearing you talk, you said some things that helped me kind of clarify my non-negotiables that are here, and that's how I'm looking at this.
Okay.
What are the non-negotiables? I take a look at the far right-hand column of this tabletop, or this handout you gave us about potential impact if exceeded the thresholds of concern. Resonates with me as I start to look at ranking of, probably what am I most concerned of just from this list, and probably get back to you, because as I think about what my non-negotiables are, there's probably a couple things that aren't on this list, which is what makes this helpful. As Ms. Lerman, as you said, these are all dominoes. These are all so closely related. If you touch one, you're going to touch another. So anyway, with that little prelude, my guardrails, I had 4, but I think actually one of them is the catch-all of minimizing the impact on the educational experience for the student. So that's the umbrella catch-all here. So if I go underneath that, I think I got this ranking right, but don't hold me to it because I'm doing this cold. But, first non-negotiable, most important non-negotiable is those things that impact the safety of our students. And I'm going to couch safety under both, or I'm going to talk about or think about safety in terms of both physical and mental, social safety for our students. Probably then number two, those things that create barriers to education, those things that impact attendance, those things that inhibit the access to education for our students. As easy as I think it would be to do what other districts are doing and say, busing's an easy one, that has an impact on a fair amount of our students. We got to get them to the classroom successfully to make them successful. And then probably the third thing, the one that's out, and I don't like it, but it is, then those other things that keep that student engaged and make their experience in Perrysburg excellent. The extracurriculars, the additional clubs, all of that. So again, those are in order of importance to me. Student safety, access, and then probably, those things that continue to make the district excellent. I don't know how that resonates. Again, I'm doing this cold, and I know that there's more. When I think about that, the physical safety of our students, there's probably a couple other metrics on here to be considered, but that's how I'm looking at my non-negotiables and my parameters as we think about this exercise.
Yeah. As a generalization, I think that was spot on because it feeds into my KISS method perfectly. So yeah, I think that.
Yeah, I was
spot on.
sitting here trying to rank the potential impact of, if exceeded, that column, and I'll continue to, but I'm not as brave to put forth what I think those should be right now.
Okay. Mr. Anderson, you look like you're ready to talk.
Yeah, no, very similar, Eric, on my side. I think I agree with the student comments you made, Sue, and I think, depending on how you frame it, anything we're gonna cut's gonna impact a student, but for me, it's the center of the educational environment, right? So how do we make cuts without materially changing the educational achievement that Perrysburg is known for? Right, so that would be kind of if you think about the core circle of defense is maintaining that. Within that is safety, right? How do we keep our students safe? How do we manage, and again, it's not just SROs, it's counselors, it's psychologists, right? It's all of those, and then I think the engagement is there too. So how do we keep them engaged and participating within the school environment? But I think if we stay within the framework of trying to maintain the educational excellence that we're known for, keeping our students safe, and then keeping them engaged within that educational environment, I think those are a good three to focus on. And when you look at this list, I won't prioritize them, but I think there's some that you can clearly say, yep, this one directly impacts educational achievement, this one tangentially, and then you can start force ranking them on where do you want to focus and how do we want to look at them.
Ms. Menke.
Okay, looking at this and pretty much having gone through something like this before, the lessons that I've learned from it are you need to make sure that you're capable of building a solid foundation in education. And that means sometimes paring back to as far as reading, writing, arithmetic. And then from there, the other important piece to have along with it is your relationship with parents, because education starts at home. You have the foundation, you have the connecting point with parents, you can build anything forward from there. We all like to have the fluff, and this is a community that expects the fluff, but I understand that if we're going to go into a difficult economic time, and it's whether our constituents have jobs or the government cuts down on our funding, we will have to look at things closely and figure out what is important and what will get our kids there. Again, I look back to my experience and I think about the kids who graduated from those schools, and they're successful kids. And some of those kids are now successful adults here in this community, and they were able to do it with a very pared down education because money was not plentiful in that school system.
Can you say a little bit more about what you then would see as the fluff, per se? I guess that's, I mean, I think that dividing piece is what we're trying to determine.
It's kind of difficult. You know, everyone expects the gifted, and yet I've seen kids succeed without gifted programs. The AP and CCP, now that's an interesting part, because if you don't provide the AP and they get into the CCP, you're going to have to pay for that anyways. So you have to make sure that you're balancing that one way or another. And if you cut back too far on the classes and you have more kids going for the CCP, you're going to pay for it there also. So I think there's some places where we need to have that conversation with our parents and our community members, that we need you to step up because we cannot take care of this anymore. And whether that's having a hard conversation with parents on, you really need to get your child into counseling, or we need the community to step up with these extracurriculars because we can't afford to do it at these certain schools, that might be the case. And it, like I said, it's asking, if our community can't hand over the money, it's asking them to step up and participate and be active and help our kids out, because they are our future and they're their future.
One of the things that I've been doing, since the retreat, was looking at the strategic plan, and some of the things, I was really just trying to focus on the academics, because I think at this point we have cut enough non-teacher positions that to continue to cut non-teacher positions will put too heavy a load on our educators, which inevitably affects our students. So I think that that's where I want to protect student achievement, but I think some of that also requires some of the support pieces of work that gets done, that if those positions aren't there, it just lands more work on our classroom teachers. So I want to be careful that when we're talking about educational achievement, we recognize the responsibilities that teachers already have and that some of the staff does that supports our teachers in the classroom. But as I looked at the academics, I looked at the strategic plan and started separating out those. I think the core academics we're all in agreement with. Besides being mandated, we also want our students prepared for the future. I think we have a focus in our strategic plan on preparing students for future careers. So I would say if we need to start cutting elective classes, that we focus, a dividing point for me would be, do we see this as an exploratory life skill versus an exploratory, this could be my job one day kind of classes? I'm not sure how to better state that. So that was kind of a dividing point for me of how do we stay focused on our core subjects. That the professional skills, college and career paths is pretty strong in our strategic plan of making sure students, and I think that goes with mental health, have a path forward and know where they're headed. I think that the extracurriculars gets difficult with what we've already cut, to start looking at the, if it's 4.5, maybe 5 million, whatever we are in that ballpark immediately for the next school year. Extracurriculars are going to have to be, I want to support certainly that kind of well-rounded, excellent experience, but I don't know how we're going to be able to do that. So that to me ends up a little bit further down, and number 2 after the core academics certainly was how do we support all students, not just through AP classes and more challenging sides, as well as the mental health, but how are we supporting, and this is another part of our strategic plan, students not on an academic future path, but more into trades, the workforce readiness classes that continue to expand and do well. How are we supporting kind of like the transportation, again, the students that are at risk for possibly not being on path to graduate? How are we making sure that we have those services there so our graduation rate and those students can graduate and go on into the future? So I think that's where bus transportation, as Mr. Bennington points out. So I think, unfortunately, we are going to be cutting electives and we are going to be cutting extracurriculars. And I think that that's where this kind of conversation, where what are core, what is the fluff? I agree that cutting AP in a district such as ours would probably be more expensive to then be sending all of those students who want those challenging classes to another class. We also know that there's students that take AP that don't have time to travel to sometimes outside the building in order to continue to pursue their academic course. So that's, I put in core academics and maintaining class size first, appropriate class size, because again, there are clear indications, especially at the younger grades, that that's really important. How do we provide support for all students, as it is in our vision statement? How do we prepare students for a successful future through professional skills, college and career paths? And then I have kind of extracurricular as my 4th level. I think, we've already cut most of the extracurriculars at the elementary and junior high. I think, unfortunately, the high school extracurricular certainly would be, unfortunately, I think that that's going to be one of the first things we're going to have to look at.
Yeah.
So I hear this kind of common, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Oh, just, as I was like ranking these potential impacts, I'm most concerned about it lined up with what you had just said there. The class size was probably, for all grade levels was like 1 and 2, and student support services, number 3 in the impacts I was most concerned about, and then, the equity and readiness gaps, probably the 4th one, and the rest of them I'd need to give some more thought to, but like my top 4 from this list.
Copying my cheat sheet over here?
Is that right? Yeah, probably, yeah.
Thanks, top 4.
I like consensus, that's good. Yeah, I mean, I feel like we're all in different ways kind of getting at the same, which I don't think is going to be surprising to anyone, but I think it's important that we have, it might be disappointing to hear some of that criteria depending on some of the things that our students are involved in or the classes that they're thinking about taking in the future. But it sounds like we're somewhat aligned with our priorities.
And I think on some of these, it's going to come down to what does a new look like, right? So for specialized programming, right, today it's a full range. Well, what does a not full range look like? Is there a blend of AP, CCP, a blend of specialized programming that we want to keep and protect in other parts where maybe we don't? It's not I think everything on here is not an up or down, yes, no. There's going to be, areas of gray where, you have to cut in some areas because you want to preserve in other areas.
That's where I think that's the building expertise of
Absolutely.
knowing where that scalpel can go best, unfortunately. Other, other values, outcomes, other non-negotiables, because again, this just the high-level discussion, but other thoughts people had.
So on the non-negotiable slide, there's a bullet for board identified protected services or roles. Do we have like a list of protected services and roles that we've created?
That would be what you would create.
Oh, okay. All right. I wasn't sure if there was an existing list.
No,
or-
no.
No, okay.
I mean, I think, I think based on, I'm not sure that I'm looking to create such a list. Again, I think that goes with the expertise. I think, we certainly look at what does support both emotional, mental health, students in the building, support for them while they're there, as well as, traditional guidance counselors. That's where I'm gonna have to definitely rely on the expertise of staff to say, what are the minimums of that type of support, the safety, the SROs, the. I'm not interested necessarily in that last, personally. I'm not interested in trying to come up with that list, but.
I think it'll produce itself
Yeah.
Yep.
as we get more focused on this.
Yes, Mr. Hassler, you've been listening to this conversation, and, any redirect or any clarifying questions from us that would be, as you start off on your next steps here?
No, I think this is helpful. I mean, we'll take some time to review the conversation, make sure we're capturing everything. I've been trying to keep notes, and I think, coming up with those kind of keys, and you kind of summarize the four areas just now. I think that's a great starting point. And as we get into, well, how do we apply, our challenge will be, how do we apply that to the principal's recommendation to cut program X? Mm-hmm. Is it impact class sizes? Is it student support services? Is it, so you start, I'm processing like, okay, we run it through these lenses to make sure, and if it does, then we need to have a conversation. You could argue that everything we do impacts some level of this. So I think it gives us an opportunity to have an earnest conversation about that impact, because some do more than others. If you cut a third grade teacher from every elementary building, that will have a direct impact on class size. Yeah. That's a priority of the board. However, if you're looking at, okay, we talked about maintaining the core academic areas. All right, if you cut those, it could be argued now you're going to cause class sizes to increase elsewhere, but then that core academic area is a priority. So you start getting into those levels, and so in my mind, I'm thinking about how that process will work and how do we evaluate these things.
Yeah, and in the world that, and with trade-offs, class size, you could, you kind of go quickly to, well, that's instructional impact.
Right.
But I maintain class size is also very much, the mental and social safety of our students as well.
Right.
When you have too big of classrooms, you put that at risk. So yeah, it's going to be a tough trade-off conversation.
Not to mention the mental clarity and safety and emotional status of the adults in the room.
Agree 100%, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, they set the tone, they set the flavor, and if they're exasperated to the point of beyond exhaustion, the whole domino pile falls. So I think it's, even though I said the bullseye is the student, very attached to that are the adults immediately around them.
All right. Well, and this is going to be, as Mr. Hassler pointed out at the beginning, a continuing conversation. So as you hear from others, certainly provide that feedback to Mr. Hassler, and we'll be talking about this again. Thanks for presenting that and for the good conversation about it. I think we're done with the superintendent's
Yes.
report, and so
Yeah.
we'll move into the treasurer's report. Mr. Drewer.
All right, it's July, but we're kind of still wrapping up the last fiscal year, so I'm looking to zip through some kind of a high-level review of where we ended the year, and I think I have some additional comments on setting up some of the conversation you just had. So let's just start here with our cash balance report. We ended the year just slightly better than last year in cash balance, which is good. You saw the narrowing year to year, and I want you to note, though, at the purple line at the bottom, that's the encumbrances. We ended the year, so those are essentially purchase orders that have been written that are encumbered. So we ended the year about 780,000. That's not unusual. It's expenses that are sitting out there we haven't paid for in the previous year. I'm going to come back to that number here in a minute. But more in a granular look, this is the fiscal year. Again, I want to keep emphasizing what our cash flow looks like. The red line is our revenue. The dark green at the bottom is our expenses. So our expenses are relatively flat. And so we need to maintain a cash balance in order to handle the ups and downs in revenue. Okay, so looking at where we ended, I know there's a lot of numbers here. We ended the fiscal year at 125 true cash days, which is slightly less than last year, but excellent. I wish we could have that every year going forward, but our revenue is down 3.7%, and I'll dig into that just a little bit more in a minute. Expenses are up 7.6%, and I want to highlight this here. When we updated the forecast in May, and we went, in November we were looking at a couple $1 million deficit. We ended up forecasting less than 400,000. We actually ended up positive. Now, remember that's $780,000 in encumbrances, so it's about a break even. But, yay for us, we came in better than expected. But on the other hand, one of the things that's lost in this conversation is there was a cost to this that, there's a financial positive, but the thing about the cost during the year, our buildings were no longer accessible to the public. We had staff having to carry bigger loads, primarily the custodial and maintenance staffs were doing more with less. That's where the biggest. We had some certified positions that left us mid-year that we didn't fill. So, other staff had to pick up that effort. And so you got to believe there was, as much as we try, not an impact on students, but it has to. So, I'm happy the fact that we did better than expected. Always nice to have a little bit more money in the bank, but there's a cost that's hidden, right? And there's pain that most of us don't see that the community's had to experience. And the obvious one is, for example, our buildings just not being available anymore. And that's, this building not being used for, for BNI on Wednesdays. It's sad not to see the parking lot full for people using the building, but that's the nature of the beast. So I just want to point out, positive, but there is a, there's a cost to that positivity, if you will. So let's talk just dig in. I'm not going to go through this line by line. I just want to hit a few things. Real estate taxes are down 8%, and that's due to the levy rejection. Our public utilities personal property was down 3.5%, partially due to the impact of the levy and also depreciation of those public utility assets, which we expect to continue. Unrestricted state aid, essentially down 1%, lower 1%, which is, it's not a huge amount, but it's down. But on the positive side, it's enrollment. The kindergarten program increased our enrollment. That was positive, but not updating the base costs in the Fair School funding formula pushed it down, and our wealth increase pushed it down. So this is where enrollment, even with significant enrollment changes, is not enough to overcome those kinds of things. For us, that base cost update is so important in the future. I just want to go down to restricted state aid, down 30%. Now, a lot of that, most of that is the reclassified threshold costs. That's special ed costs that are reimbursed a year later. I've put them in down here and refund a previous year's expense. That's up so much because of that. So most of that is artificial during the reclassification. But also noted at the high school, because of certification issues, some of our STEM programs, which used to be CTE credit, are no longer. So we lose a little bit of restricted funding. It's not a ton, but we use it to buy equipment. It can't be used for anything else but equipment. And it's something in the future. Of course, we're having a tough time finding a STEM teacher. as it is, and in order to have those CTE classes qualified as CTE, they have to have certain certifications. And all those certifications have to really run through the career tech. So it's a partner, there are teachers, our students, but their career tech has to sign off on it. And there's some nuances there. So just know, but the biggest bulk of that is due to reclassification of threshold cost. And moving on, all other, our interest earnings continue to be strong. And the Fed is meeting this week. We don't expect to make any Fed rate changes, so that continues to be strong. And I'll talk about investments a little bit at the end. On the expense side, I'm not going to. We came in the year really did pretty well. Purchase services are up significantly, and building maintenance and special education issues, those are the two drivers. I'm actually looking at this year's, my forecast for May. I'm already seeing pressures for special ed costs. And it's driven by the students and their needs, right? It's not like they're going back to Chris's point about what is kind of mandatory. Well, if it's in the student's IEP, it's mandatory, right? And we have to deliver those services. So just know, big increase, but those are, and the building maintenance stuff is, again, you saw, Mr. Mapus's report. We have a bunch of little stuff like, we got to repair this window, we got tuck pointing and stuff like that he doesn't have the budget for. It comes out of here. I want to talk just a little bit about supplies. It's not a huge dollar amount in the grand scheme of things, but it was really up year over year. We've had some good cost control efforts. The copier work we've done, Mr. Schaefer back there behind the wall is the most loved person in Perrysburg schools because of it.
That's why he's behind the wall.
He's staying hidden. But things like the new buses, when we did our cost reports for transportation, our maintenance costs are down because the new buses obviously cost less. They cost less to maintain, plus they're new, so maintain. So there's things like this. The other thing I want to point on the supplies, it's a huge increase, really. Even then, $600,000 year over year. But part of that is too. We have instructional supplies that were outside the general fund that we've brought in the general fund, but are paid for by student fees. So it's offset by some revenue. So it does inflate it some, but just know there's some revenue to offset some of it. And we did that mainly for accounting purposes to really track what our expenses are. And so that's really it. Property taxes are down. Income tax, I didn't really talk about that, but it's up per trend, and I expect it to stay that way. State funding is flat. We've already talked about for next year. Now, I'll make a comment here. The governor, one of the governor's vetoes got overridden today, and that was on the types of levies. It doesn't really impact us financially at this point. The big one that impacts is the 20 mil floor. That's the one that would impact us if they override that veto. And I don't know, they don't have it scheduled yet for that vote. That tells me right now, the House doesn't have the votes. If they had the votes, they would have gone after it. And interest earnings continue to be strong. On the expense side, again, salary and benefits were better than expected, mainly due to unfilled positions. Going back to a comment that Ms. Roland Miller made about where the opportunities when you look at reductions. The fact is, salary and benefits are by far our biggest expense area. And of that, 74% are certified. So if you look at this past year, we had almost $46,000 in salaries, 46 million. 33 million of it isn't certified. Wow. So cutting classified staff will not get us there. It's just a fact. Unfortunately, and of course, it's again, going back to you want to protect the students, what we're providing the students. We spend most of our money in the classrooms. That's just a fact. I think Tom wanted to certify.
Oh, I was just going to say certified means teaching position. So just inside we know what certified means, but the bulk of our the
Guidance
certified
counts.
position?
It's
Guidance
certified
counselors,
and counselors and anyone really is in the PE, in the Teachers Association, essentially. Okay, if they have to have a license. And we saw some reductions this past year in SPED, but again, with special education, we've had, I never put it this way. We had a student, for example, who is transitioned out, was a fairly high-cost student. That helps, but you just don't know who else is coming. And so we're gonna stay on, we're gonna still work on supply budget, but just know, counting paper clips is important, but it's not gonna get us there. But we ended the year strong, but I just want to recall it was not without pain. All right, so just pat ourselves in the back. We had some cost control, and some of it was by no choice. Any questions on that? Okay, I want to take just a minute. It's a good idea annually we talk about our investments. I reviewed this with the policy committee on Friday.
Finance committee.
Finance committee, policy,
committee, yeah.
Finance committee. Yeah, so let me just hit a couple things. Our goals with our investments are in this order: principal security, liquidity, and then we look at return. And there's a balance there, right? And of course, the Ohio Revised Code limits what we can do anyway. I'm not buying cryptocurrency. I'm not day trading. Though I know of a treasurer who was day trading. He is now retired, but he needed to retire anyway, but that's beside the point. Our investment policy, it's been a couple of years since it's been updated, but it's still current, it's consistent with current law, and you can look at that, and for the most part, the board has authorized me to invest in the instruments that we invest in. And we have a hierarchy. We work with Huntington Bank. That's where our checking account is. For the most part, we try to keep our checking account balance low because it doesn't earn us anything or very little. It costs us some fees, but it's worth it because then in Star, Ohio, we can make 4.5%, 4.25%. So we have in Star, Ohio, which is a uninsured money market. Essentially, we use Red Tree Investments for things like commercial paper, government agencies, and CDs, so things that, again, they manage it for us. There's a small management fee, but I think it's really worth it. And then Huntington, their investment services, has some money, and that's almost all CDs with other banks. So we spread out our risk and our timing by doing that. I would say we're heavy in Star, Ohio right now. I met with Red Tree today. It's something we want to look at, but right now with our cash situation uncertain because of the levy, there's no interest. I have no interest in moving money out of our most liquid place at this point until I can be sure I can stay somewhere for a while. So Star, Ohio is our literally what we can do with Star, Ohio is we got payroll tomorrow. I move money out same day, so we earn interest right up to the last minute. So, and it's paid off So I just want to make sure you had that. Make sure, I can't remember what the policy number is, but you look at the policy, any questions. And if you ever want to see what our investments are, every month in my statement from Red Tree and Huntington, they provide a list of where our money is invested and how much percentage and that kind of thing. So we do have that. The Finance Committee got that on Friday. I did not attach it to here, but it's available if you want it. So with that, I will see if there's any questions.
Is Star, Ohio, where we have our largest amount of investment?
Yes,
Did I hear you say it's uninsured?
Yeah.
it's uninsured.
So therefore high risk, but big return.
Well, if you consider that we have $35 million in Star, Ohio, and they're investing billions of dollars I think it's high risk and it's uninsured, but it's not high. They're very, very low risk investments.
When you take a look at what's actually making up those portfolios, it's awfully boring.
Yeah, it's very, very low risk. We essentially, I would say, Star, Ohio is only risk because it's not insured, but everything else we have, it has to be very, very low risk. What commercial paper we have, it can only be the highest rated. And then on CDs, what you'll see is, if we buy CDs, you'll see less than 250,000 on those purchases because you're insured up to 250,000. So yes, do I lose sleep about money being in Star, Ohio? No, because it would, let's put it this way, the disaster they would have to strike to wipe that out, none of us would care because we probably would, we wouldn't be sitting here. And I don't know if that helps or not, Sue, but it's an awful lot of money to have sitting in Star. I would like to move it more, spread it out a little bit more, but I'm just trying to stay liquid until November.
Well, I'm sure you understand why I asked the question, so.
Oh,
I heard the same word.
understand.
Yeah.
Mr. Bennington, Ms. Menke, other comments from the Finance Committee meeting?
The minutes are there. Yeah, we did spend some time looking at the individual investments that were sitting throughout that investment portfolio and probably bored the other, I think Ms. Price was in that meeting and she was certainly engaged, but probably like, come on guys, move on, because Randy and I got pretty spirited in the discussion. Also kind of, talked briefly about, we had a great member of our committee who had to step back, reduce his time, a real loss to us, Mr. Vogel, and talking about what it would look like to replace someone like him. Mr. Vogel certainly had a really special set of skills and a mindset and something that is not easily replaced. Talk about what the role of somebody like that would be. I mean, certainly be open to some additional help like that. When you take a look at the work that gets done in finance, in Randy's world, it's not very creative. Most of it is driven through compliance and regulatory needs. He does have sounding boards, on the investment stuff and other treasurers that he talks to. I know Ms. Menke does. I do. People are always quick to offer their opinions on the finances. But again, particularly in a district in the shape we're in, there's only so much that can be done. Probably where there is a need for financial minds is helping with the advocacy and telling the story, and the why is, well, why do things work the way that they do. So we didn't go very far in the discussion, but I just want to give a little bit of flavor of that in the room. I think those were the high points in the meeting.
Ms. Menke, anything else? Any other questions, Finance?
Before I forget, I apologize that the work session in August, I will be out of the country. So you'll need to find a treasurer pro tem. When we scheduled this trip, I forgot all about the work session. Not that my family cares, but.
All right, thanks for the warning. Whoever comes first to the meeting can be treasurer pro tem. Everyone's gonna be late. Okay, whoever comes last to the meeting. No, that won't work. Anyway, we'll figure it out. Thank you for the warning. On to community engagement, Ms. Menke.
I think we have.
Oh, I'm sorry, we need to approve things. We have a motion in 7.2 for approval of the financial report of June 2025.
So moved.
Second. Sorry.
Mr. Bennington, I must go with Ms. Larimer. I heard her first. Mr. Drew, roll call, please.
Yes.
Ms. Menke,
Yes.
Ms. Larimer,
Yes.
Mr. Anderson,
Yes.
Ms. Roland Miller.
Yes. And now I will move the meeting along to 8.1. Ms. Menke, community engagement.
Sorry. I do not have my notes with me right now, so,
Well, we talked about the Communications Task Force and our continued thanks to those who participated. There were 10 members, and we met 4 times in May and June, and we have kind of a final notes from them that we've been reviewing and impacting our discussions and kind of next steps. We talked about the e-flyers, which go out weekly. We all get those in our email. We are trying to look at, is there a way to decrease that frequency in order to free up some of Ms. Zicker's time in order to do some of the things that the task force came up with. So that's a continued conversation of how do we better communicate and kind of shift into more of the, kind of video, social media pieces that really came out of the communications task force. And then we continue to talk about ways for those of us on the board to be engaging out in the community more. And that's one of the things is Ms. Menke's working on establishing a schedule for us to be available, say Saturdays, one Saturday a month that one or two of us would be available out in the community. We could look at some evenings if that would fit better with our community member schedules, if board members would be more available.
When looking at various locations too, to make sure that we hit all sections of the community, because our community is spread out enough that hitting over there by the Kroger area versus hitting downtown and hitting over towards Levis, we want to make sure that we give everybody the opportunity to engage for their needs.
So hopefully starting that next month sometime, so be following up on that. Obviously, we're also looking at how to continue some of the dialogue events with Mr. Hostler and Mr. Drewer, kind of maybe more issue, maybe more open. Again, we'll certainly take your recommendations for that. And we also began a very brief discussion. We had run out of time about bringing some community members to be onto that committee. We certainly would probably look at some task force folks, or just continue to engage them appropriately in the different tasks. So I think that covers the meeting. Any questions about that? Oh, I just exited out of the agenda. It's what happens when you hiccup when you hit my screen. All right. Community engagement, we're on to 9, which is our more open time for other committees, whether it be the superintendent committees, other committees that we serve on, and other items for board discussion. Start with operations.
That was canceled.
That was canceled. Moving on to human resources personnel.
Oh. We did have a personnel meeting. Sadly, I did not bring my notes because I've never reported on personnel before, so I didn't bring anything on that. Mr. Christie did a real good job, and hopefully y'all were able to open what I sent you from him on clarifying in big detail where the cuts were, how they affected, how things moved. It was a very simplistic yet very specific document that he sent out, so I sent that all to you because I thought it was really good. Like I say, how he got through these last few months, I don't know. We did discuss something that kind of drilled into me though a little bit, and I'm wondering if this is something that we need to do. So we've talked even tonight about the fact that we borrowed from Peter to pay Paul out of our savings to finish out last school year, and that the 6 million plus of cuts that we made, even though some, poor Jason, started in the spring semester, the bulk of which fall on us this coming school year, this fall. Out of sight, out of mind. People have not seen, nor have they necessarily felt what that $6 million cut is. It's not really tangible. You know, the people who got their walking zone emails, they're finding out. The redistricting, they found out. But a lot of the bulk of what that vote did last fall is falling on us this fall. Is there any rationality to reviewing how this fall is looking different than last fall? What these cuts really, what the voted cuts that the community wanted, what that really looks like? As a reminder, before we get started into the school, if I'd been smart, I would have brought that up before, because tonight's probably the night to do it, because by the next meeting, or we can do it at the work session or whatever. I just wonder if there's any validity to talking about that, that here's what you voted for, this is what it looks like, this is what you can expect starting in August. Would that be
So Communications Task Force talked a lot about this, because I think you're right, that the reality of the reductions that we made as a result of the rejection of the levy are happening now, that people's contracts who, that we don't have positions starting this month and next month and in September. And so there has been work done that Mr. Hostler and Ms. Zicker have been doing to try to kind of boil down, and Mr. Christie's spreadsheet certainly was a part of that. Like, now that all the dominoes have really fallen, what's the end result? And so there has been work to kind of consolidate that into, there was the 11-page document, or however many pages it was, and the most recent version is down to a page or two, I think. And so maybe it's more, I don't know if to review that in a meeting is worthwhile, in the sense that we probably wouldn't review it until August as school's starting, but maybe,
But that could be when people are paying attention to.
yeah, or even just highlighting it's out here, and we're trying to look at explaining more clearly what is that impact, that last column. What is the impact to losing these? Who does that work fall to? Because every single person in this district in the position that was cut was doing valuable work that now is gonna have to be done by someone else. So.
Or not getting done at all.
I mean, is that
So I'm just throwing that out
something
there.
that we want to have
Into the-
come at a later meeting? Like, it probably wouldn't be till the August regular meeting that we would have time to review it. Okay,
Yeah.
add that. So August
And
regular.
I think it could overlap nicely with the people will begin to experience these things, whereas before, it's, as Sue, you pointed it out, it is hypothetical.
Yeah.
So you're gonna have people that now it's going to resonate what that means. They see it on a chart in October and they don't know what that impact is today. Today meaning after school resumes, they'll have a feel. And I think that'll be important then to fold that into the discussion about these reductions. So maybe instead of a standalone, maybe it becomes part of the presentation about the next round, or that plan, and referring back to, remember, this is what we said, here's what happened. As we look forward, here's what we're saying, so you know what will happen. So maybe we could maybe discuss how it could complement the work that we're doing, or a standalone would be, we could do that too. But I think it'd go a long way for residents to understand, we said this was going to happen, here's what happened. And as we prepare for planning of a possible rejection, we're continuing that conversation.
And I think it's important, there certainly are some community members, when they look at our budget for this year, and they don't see it having gone down net $6 million. They think that we've not actually cut $6 million, and we've cut $6 million worth of positions and things out of mostly people out of our district. So I think to be able to also stay, as we go into the levy, here's how we did cut $6 million, here's the impact of that, and here's the value of this next levy that we're asking for. So it's a good point. Okay, we didn't have student achievement this month either. What else do we have? Perrysburg Schools Foundation or development?
Yeah, so for the Schools Foundation, continuing to support the district, teachers and students. So they've been able to pick up some professional development opportunities over the summer. And they're continuing the work they were doing in the spring with an outreach, letting teachers and classrooms know that they can apply for grants. And they're planning to continue that work into August. And I think in the spring it resulted in a flurry of grants as people realized, oh, we can ask for money for this for our classroom. And they're doing a great job of funding that, some student instruments and things. So.
Good. Great. Thankful for that partnership. Anything development?
We had a development meeting back in mid-June, and towards the end of June, so a little bit stale here. I don't remember if we had the regular board meeting before or after that, but you know, the work that Mr. Abke continues to do for the district, you know, it continues to show just great progress. I mean, I don't have the exact numbers here, but giving dollars is up, giving by the number of participants is up. And most remarkable is that giving for what he considers kind of those higher level donors. I mean, I know he appreciates every donor, so I don't want to put words in his mouth or rephrase something, but those higher dollar donors are up as well. That's been a testament to the position that was fielded to help give him some support a couple of years ago in order for him to go out and find those or talk to and build relationships with these larger volume donors. But you know, another position that we've eliminated that we'll start to see some impact on potentially is, you know, the lack of that support, and you know, he's working to find the right balance of moving things forward with limited resources like everybody in the district. He's also got a couple of specific projects that a couple, you know, local businesses that he's working with, talking to. He would not be happy if I shared those. It's, you know, it's like nothing's done until it's done. Nothing's over the transom. You know, you haven't caught the fish till you've netted it. So don't want to go into too much details on that. But he's, you know, clearly working hard to bring in dollars to help support other areas of the district that don't necessarily come in through our normal funding sources. So appropriately vague, but that's my update.
Pupil and Student Services, this is another one where my memory is that we met at some point, or was that canceled? Those 2 months, do we meet this month?
No, I don't think we do.
Yeah, I don't have we have not met recently, so no report. Policy, we don't have an active ad hoc. I do want to say that Business Advisory Council did meet in June after our last meeting. Mr. Anderson also attended. I kind of referenced this obliquely before, but the workforce readiness classes that we have, there's 3 different classes. That enrollment is up, and they're looking to hopefully increase that in the future. Career days have been scheduled, and so if you're interested in that, to talk to Ms. Albright about those dates. And they're also working on an intern kind of guideline book for those who host interns or, you know, the workforce folks. And so that'll be available to support employers and give them, you know, if you're thinking about, someone would be thinking about being able to offer kind of internship possibility for a student, there'll be some guidance on that, which I think will be really helpful for those who haven't done something like that before. They were the highlights that popped off my head. I don't know where my notes are from that meeting, but anything else in that? I will just remind folks at our committee meetings through August, and I'll be continuing to update just the notes that I did from our retreat. We'll be looking at establishing goals for our committees, so just a reminder about that and kind of getting some of those board goals in front of us starting in August as well. Okay. Anything else, discussion, anyone wanted to bring up? Our next item is 10.1, the resolution to proceed as drafted based on the resolution of necessity. I think as a reminder for more the public than all of us, since we've been living it, is really, we've been talking about this levy since the November 2024 levy was rejected last fall. You know, in April, we really needed that 5-year forecast, and once that was more tangible to us, we started some of those conversations in May, especially after the public did, you know, approve the PI levy. We didn't have to worry about considering including capital expenses in our operating budget. So that was incredibly helpful for our 5-year forecast. June, we've been talking about this since the beginning of June. We looked at everything from $8 million to $14 million scenarios. At the beginning of June, we had really started focusing in on the 11 million, and then House Bill 335 was introduced, and we weren't sure what to do, so we put a pause on it. Last month we came back, we continued to discuss in particular, the amount. We talked about the 8 or 9.9 scenarios and the 11 in particular last month, and also the 4 to 5 year options, and we ended up passing by a majority vote the resolution to proceed, and that is now, resolution of necessity to get the actual costs, and we now have those actual costs in this resolution to proceed, if that is the way we choose to go. Does anyone have any discussion or any questions, clarifications? We'll see that there is the 274 estimated cost per 100,000 that would now be in that resolution to proceed.
Yeah, just one quick comment, it's really very, very minor, but we've been estimating 7.84 mils and the actual 7.83. So I was off by a few cents, I apologize. But
Every penny counts.
I'm actually patting myself on the back for that calculation, that's all.
That's why you brought it up, okay.
So, yes.
Just checking.
Okay, we can come back in a couple of days to do this if you think it'll be lower still.
Well, I don't know
Can-
about that.
Can I get you to
Sell a
7.8?
couple more houses and, all right, discussion?
I appreciate you kind of giving the timeline of all the discussions we've had about this, because I've gotten feedback that we made this decision off of one meeting, and I get that not everybody's engaged or paying attention. It's the summertime months, but so I encourage the community to go back and look at the hours upon hours of video that's available, because we've got our receipts to talk about to show how much we've talked about this, and if you know that or you see that and you still don't think we've talked about it enough, it almost feels willfully ignorant at this point. So
Well, and to add to that, the fact that Finance Committee talked about it
yeah.
much more than, you walked through all those scenarios more closely than we did, who got it, here's the big picture, let's talk about the different big pictures. So a lot of it was also discussed at Finance Committee.
Thank you for that. Yeah. So I'm really pleased, proud of the work that the board has done and the discussions that this board has had to get to the point where we've got them to help move forward in a way that now the campaign committee and us as individual board members outside of the room can go out and start advocating and talking about why this is necessary.
Anyone else? Comments? Okay. And hearing nothing else, I would ask for a motion to approve the resolution to proceed.
Oh, happy to do that. So moved.
Second.
Mr. Bennington, Ms. Menke, I heard first. There's a lot of ties tonight. Mr. Drewer, roll call, please.
Mr. Bennington,
Yes.
Ms. Menke,
Yes.
Mr. Anderson,
Yes.
Ms. Larimer,
Yes.
Ms. Rowland Miller.
Yes. Thank you. All right. 10.2, outside of the consent agenda, we have a motion to approve a substitute teacher for the 25-26 school year whose last name happens to be Bennington and whose first name is Brandy. Can we have a motion for that?
So moved.
Second.
Mr. Anderson, Ms. Larimer, second. Mr. Drewer, roll call, please. Oh, discussion? Nope, okay. Mr. Drewer, roll call, please.
Mr. Anderson,
Yes.
Ms. Larimer,
Yes.
Ms. Menke,
Yes.
Mr. Bennington,
Abstain?
Ms. Rowland Miller.
Yes, thank you. Our consent agenda items are 12 through 16. I do want to highlight, if anyone wishes for the 16.2 policy to go to the policy committee versus accepting it here as a first reading, or to accept it as first reading and to send it to policy, we would pull it from the consent agenda and handle that separately. Any other, Mr. Hostler, any other comments about the consent agenda?
Not at this time. Well, it's a very busy time. We're still Usually, we have all of our positions filled, and we still have, I believe, 2 teaching-type positions that are open. So that is something that is a little bit unusual for us, so we're continuing to work, and you're seeing some of that activity happen here. So certainly some activity with gearing up for next year. We know that our head boys basketball coach did submit a resignation, and we certainly appreciate the 25 years of service and leading the program. And we certainly wish him the best with his next endeavors, so.
Yeah, 15.1, we thank Coach Boyce for wonderful service through the basketball team. Okay. No other discussion? Or anyone want to pull anything from a consent agenda? And I will ask for a motion to approve the consent agenda.
So moved.
Second.
Ms. Larimer, Mr. Bennington, Mr. Drewer, roll call, please.
Ms. Larimer,
Yes.
Mr. Bennington,
Yes.
Mr. Anderson,
Yes.
Ms. Menke,
Yes.
Ms. Rowland Miller.
Yes. I have no other signups for the public comment for non-agenda items. If there's no objections, we are adjourned. No objections, adjourned. I was really hoping for 2 hours.